G'day folks, welcome back to another episode of Stuff and Such. We're still on this chainsaw grinder. Unfortunately, last video I had my tripod on the table and there was just enough vibration with the grinding. It vibrated the video and there was no focus at all, so it was basically an hour's worth of footage to go through that was garbage. But that's good, because now I got several weeks worth of use on this thing now. Fairly proficient in it. One thing I wanted to show you here real quick. So you'll see in here there's these little springs, and in the base plate there's these little detents. As far as I can tell, there is actually no adjustment. You're supposed to be able to rotate that to each location. However, those balls kind of lock it in place and I don't see how it can move. But anyways, I don't really use that anyways, so it's not really important to me. So we're gonna do a little talk about angles and what they represent and why they're reasonably important. It gives here the vice angle, top plate angle, and tilt angle. So we're going to go over the geometry of the angle just a wee bit here. So it's pretty straightforward. So we're looking down at the top of the tooth here. And so then it's typically set for about 30 degrees. And when you're adjusting for this angle, you're actually adjusting for this cutting radius in there. So when your tooth looks like that, you're adjusting this angle here. Does that make sense? So you're adjusting for this angle here. Basically, what I've learned machining, the more tapered your angle is, the sharper it'll be, but how much faster it'll wear due to heat and just abrasion. So if you have an angle like that versus an angle, cutting angle like that, and this is your cutting edge compared to this will take a lot more blunt. It may not be as sharp and as shaving, but it'll stay sharper longer. So they've kind of found the happy medium is about 30 degrees. If you find you're needing to tailor for what you're more into, if you're into hardwoods, you can sometimes knock that down to about 20, 25. Typically, ripping chain is about 0 degrees to 10 degrees. That's because they want the chain to last as long as possible to cut, because they don't want it to dull midway through a tree. So that instead of having this angle, you'll have an angle that looks like that on the top. Opposed to like that. So your adjustments are kind of related to each other a bit, because your grinding wheel will come in like that. So you can have this set for cutting 90, but it'll still sharpen like that to some degree, but it'll be more blunt. But it won't be 90 degrees on the face of that. It's kind of hard to explain. So we'll put a chain in here and we'll go over what I mean. Here we have a a regular semi-chisel chain. You'll have to excuse me shaking here. I had to take the camera off the tripod to get you in here. So how you work is the grinding stone comes down and grinds like so. To grind more of a ripping chain, you would be right there at about 10 degrees. And as you can see, hopefully, typically you'll adjust more on this setting here. So the measurement in the back, it's the one that's a little more critical, although your range of window is pretty small. Basically, if you're in cleaner softwood, you can coast down to more of the 50 range, about there. And if you're in denser, dirtier hardwood, you can coast up to about 60. This angle determines how long you can go between sharpenings. So you set her for 55, 50, or 60. You're right in the ballpark. You won't notice too much of a difference until you have done quite amount of chains and you kind of learn to expect your chain to last a certain length of time. So I'm going to fire up and just kind of demonstrate it, and hopefully it'll be able to help you understand what's going on a bit more. You want to take a quick look at the overall condition of the chain before you set the depths and limits of the grinder. If you're noting a considerable amount of them have damages, like on the face here, or they were poorly sharpened, so you got to really come back a considerable ways. Ideally, you'd like to pick the worst tooth of the chain to start with, because you don't want to be going along sharpen, and then come to 1 or 10 that are absolutely terrible, forcing you to readjust your how far forward your chain is. So that's what this adjustment here is for. It's kind of a limiter. See, what I do is I tend to just kind of snug it up till it rolls kind of stiffly through the rail, like that. And then as I'm sharpening, I'll put my fingers here and just apply a little bit of back pressure, and then hit it with the grinder. So here, I would set it so it just takes the face cut off there, and it'll be good to go. But this chain's brand new. So let's go ahead and fire it up and give you a tiny little demonstration. So it's quite a bit just by feel. One thing you want to make sure you don't do is cook the metal and the steel. Because if you get it too hot, then it's basically impossible to sharpen with a file again. Makes it really brittle, and then the chain is almost useless. So then, once you're done that side, what you do is you take this, rotate it to 30 on the other side, index one tooth, it's really hard to operate this thing so you can see. Like that. Next tooth. fairly straightforward. So overall for this grinder, I'd say it's a passable unit. Obviously it's not a professional unit. Why I purchased it was basically to sharpen my own chains a little bit. I'm pretty good hand filing, but I also wanted to just be able to test the market and see if there's much opportunity for chainsaw sharpening, if people are interested in that. And then if it turns out to be a booming enterprise, well then I'll obviously upgrade considerably in the future. But this way it just kind of dips my toe into it and see what's it like and that. You might wonder if I would recommend purchasing this if you are good at hand filing. You might wonder if it's something you might need. I would say no. If you're any good at hand filing, don't bother getting a grinder. Biggest reason is because you need to take your chains off the chainsaw bar, and that can take 5 to 10 minutes, or depending on what model and stuff you have. So that can kind of be a bit of a pain in the rear sometimes. So if you spend 5 to 10 minutes taking your chain off and putting it back on, a good hand filer can sharpen their chain in 5 to 10 minutes. So I would say stick with that if you could. So also if you're bad at hand filing, I guess the question is, would I recommend a chainsaw grinder to the people that are bad at hand filing? And honestly, I'd have to say probably no. I wouldn't recommend it. There's quite a few companies that offer filing jig guides, and those, they clamp on your bar. They have your file held in place. It has all your angles adjustable right there, and it's almost dummy proof. You couldn't hardly screw up with it if you tried, and they work really quite well. So as for where this grinder fits, it's not good for professional. It's not really a homeowner's version, in my opinion. I would say it's perfect for me, but if it works out that it does become a little decent side business, then it's not for me anymore. So it's a very, in my opinion, these style of grinders, the $100 to $150 grinders, they seem like they fit a very small niche of people. So then I guess the next question would be, well, why don't I hand file for potential customers? And that question has, I guess, two-part answers. One is my freehand isn't perfect. It's serviceable, but it's not perfect. And also, well, so I would, when I make a product for someone, I would kind of want it to be as best as my ability. So if I can get something that's more accurate, then I will. But the biggest thing is that most people don't want to drop a chainsaw off at your place and be without a chainsaw. They'd be more apt to have a couple spare chains, bring 2 chains to you and use the one, and then come pick up their 2 chains and drop off some more, and kind of have a rotational type operation. So that way they're not left without a chainsaw. And alright guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. Hopefully it was helpful for you. As you can probably tell from the footage, it's quite hard to get that camera in the angles where you can actually see what's going on in here. It's fairly small, like that's my hand, so as you can kind of figure, it'd be hard to operate it and get my big old figure out of the way and film for you. But anyways, hopefully you found the information helpful about angles, how steeper is more blunt is stronger, more tapered is weaker, and hopefully that'll help you set up and how you want to run your saw. or your grinder, and your saw, I guess. Anyways, thanks for watching. Subscribe. We'll see you in the next video, guys. Stay tuned.